So got these lightweight Land Rover doors, and because of all the rot that I've started stripping pieces off them, taken the glass out the window on the top, and hopefully some galvanised windows are going to arrive for them. I did try ordering some last year, but the company that makes them couldn't supply them, so I'm trying again this year. And what I'm doing is I'm taking off the trim here that held the rubber on. You can see it's just rotten. I think this is the one off the bottom of the door, actually. Yeah, that's the one off the bottom of the door, hence there's no rubber on it anymore, and the other one with the rubber on is still in there. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is this piece, the actual what we would call door pillar section, that's in fair condition, and it's the same on both sides, both doors like that. But this piece here, the bottom and the part going up there, these pieces are severely rotten. I can put my hand in underneath them, so they're just rotten, falling off. And the way these are made is it's a flat sheet of steel, and then this shaped stamped piece here is then spot welded onto a flat back piece, and they're welded into this shape, and then they're stuck against some aluminium sheet, and the aluminium sheet is just basically folded around on the edges. But of course, where you get dissimilar metals and water, so basically you've got aluminium and steel and a supply of water being ran on it, then you get corrosion. Fortunately, there doesn't seem to be much in this piece, but the others are all gone. So what I'm planning on doing now is, I could have ordered repair sections for this in the same sort of stuff, or I could have got galvanised ones. But I'm feeling like trying something different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and assemble something to do the job of this, but in standard box section steel. So I'm going to use some 30mm steel box section, and weld pieces of galvanized angle steel onto it, and see how I get doing that. Then once it's done, I'm going to put another piece of angle steel riveted on, so the angle is like so, and I'm going to slide rubber on to the angle piece here and probably bond it, so when I rivet the angle piece here, the rubber will be held captive on the side strip of it, and I'm going to do that all the way around, and that way I think I'll be able to achieve a fairly neat job. And there is some of the box section that I've ordered. Okay, this is the Series 2A or Series 3 lightweight Land Rover door that needs repairing. You notice I cut the bottom rusted ironwork off, and what I'm doing is I'm replacing it with box section and angle iron. Now the angle iron I'm using, or angle steel if you want to be more correct, is zinc plated, and it started off life at about 60mm angle, and I've cut one side down to about 25mm, or sorry, just shade under 30, because I'm using 30mm box section with about a 2mm wall, or 1.5 possibly, to keep the weight down. So basically you can see what I've done. I've cut the angles out in this, and I've trimmed one side down. Then I've drilled approximately 8 to 10mm holes, which I will plug weld against the box section. I have also primed the surfaces of the metal where the weld is going to take place, and it's primed with a weld through primer, so it's basically a conductive primer, so that you can weld and that means that the two steel surfaces have got a degree of rust protection where the weld is going to take place. Right, so what I've done is I've clamped the metal down and I've just put a quick couple of tack welds which I will grind off again once I've done the job properly. So basically this is holding the metal in exactly the right position for me to have it formed so that I can then weld in the box section, because obviously the angle's got to come out to weld the box section in from the rear. Then I've got to try and place it back in. Now it's going to be slightly interesting to try and squeeze this back in with this folded over edge, but I didn't want to completely unfold this aluminium edge for obvious reasons, because the aluminium will start to crack if you do a lot of flexing on this. So when I've removed the original steel, I've just slightly opened this up. You can see where it's normally closed, so I've only slightly opened it, and I had to cut the original steel work out with an angle grinder to shift it. So I'm hoping I'm going to be able to squeeze this in. What I may have to do is I may have to cut some more metal away around here, and in any case I do intend to, because this is severely rusted in this area here, but I'm intending to weld this box section onto this and then do some repair work to the remaining steel around the rear here. You can see it's very poor, but the front of it doesn't look too bad. So I didn't want to have to chop this out, because once I chopped this out it was getting very close to the lock and the top of the door frame, so I didn't want to go travelling that far up. Yeah, so there we go. See how I go getting this out now. Okay, so there you are. I've welded the angle to the box section, and I've fitted it in a couple of times to test it out. I did find that I had to fold this aluminium edge up, so what I did was I got my propane torch out and I softened the aluminium up and tapped it slowly back, and hopefully that should go back down again, just cold tapping it down with a hammer. So the next stage is I'm going to put a couple of little tacks on this. I've sprayed this over again in my weld through zinc primer there. I've also put some aluminium or zinc based paint on the bare aluminium that was underneath. That's something that I think Land Rover never actually did, and that's what causes these things to rot so much, because there's no good barrier coats between the two different metals, so hence you get the corrosion once the water gets in there. You can see there's lots of rot in this thing, but some you just can't get at. I did try getting a new door base, purchasing one from a supplier, but they seem to be out of production now, so it's a case of I'm doing my own repairs. I could have bought some proper profiled sections for doing this, but I decided to have a go along the DIY route and just do it this way, and hopefully it'll all work out. Right, so I'm going to do some tacking, and then once it's tacked I'm going to put it on the vehicle and push it into shape so that I know the doors won't be out of shape when it's closed, you know, so that the base corners of the door will actually be snug in against the body when the door's closed correctly. So I'll get on with that and see how it goes. Okay, so it's now welded up. Seems to be working okay. Obviously there's a difference between the original stuff. This original stuff has a slight angle on the side, whereas mine has more of a right angle to it. But once the rubber is fitted onto here, I don't think there'll be any particular issues. There's lots of slack space in around the doors of the Land Rover. Yeah, so I'm okay. It's welded up fairly neatly. Let's say the original stuff also has a piece of steel radiating inwards, whereas mine doesn't. I can just run some sealant around the edge and seal the edge of that off. No problems there. I need to also patch the steel up here yet. That's got to be done. Just find a little bit of scrap, a bit of stainless steel that I can probably weld into there quite easy. Yeah, then what I'll do is I will try and wax oil the inside of the piping in some sort of way, even if it means drilling a hole and pushing a pipe in, maybe on the ends or something. I'll work that one out. Yeah. Yeah, door closes, looks alright. Yeah, get on with the other jobs now. Okay, this is the left-hand door off my Land Rover. You can see this one is just about completely rusted out along the bottom. I've drilled all the holes and taken off the weather strips which are riveted on. Yeah, so that's come off there. That might be going back on there with a clean up. You can see the rubber's not particularly good condition. I have got some ideas about replacing this rubber and these strips with something else. A strip of angle iron with a piece of rubber clipped on the edge along there, and I think that might work, but it's all a test at the moment. Anyway, so I've ran the angle grinder through the corners here and here, and I'm basically in the process of folding the aluminium edging strip back gently. You can use a blowtorch if the aluminium looks extremely poor condition. Warm it with a blowtorch and soften the alloy, and then fold it back gently. I may do this more once I've got this rusted strip out. Obviously I could cut this through the centre as well, maybe put a V in it like so, and then drag the two corners out, because at the end of the day this is all scrap, but it's at the point of wanting to come out any moment now. There we go, and it comes out. Now the back of this isn't such bad condition, but that front there, basically the rain has been running in through the channels through from the top window frame, and it's been coming into the channels, and it lodges along the bottom and rots the bottom out. You can get one of these strips on eBay for not too much, and you can put a brand new one in and you can do that repair. But as with the driver's door, what I'm doing is an alternate. Right, basically I'm using some angled steel. Now this was equal angle, about, I've got a rule here. There we go. A measuring device. Basically, quick measurement. Right, 5 centimeter angle, steel angle, galvanized steel angle, 5 centimeter. And what I've done is I've cut one side down with hacksaw in the vise. It only took 10 minutes, if that, to run down there with a hacksaw. Didn't use a jigsaw, electric saw or anything like that, just a normal hand hacksaw. Put it in the vise that way with the blade side on and just cut down. Quite easy to do. And basically the box section, which I've got here, which is 30mm box section, will sit in there like so. I drill a series of holes along the back edge and along the base, and I plug weld it to the box section. Before I weld it on, I basically blow this over with some conductive primer, weld through conductive primer, so that I can weld to it, and it primes the surface to prevent or reduce the amount of rust that can build up between these two layers. So this is galved, this isn't galved, but it seems to work. It's worked out relatively well on the other door, which I've got sorted out over there. I just need to paint it all matte to match and tidy it up a bit. Yeah, I've taken the old locks out, which was slam locks, and I'm putting anti-burst locks in to make it more secure. Slam locks have a problem in that they're not very secure. Also, when you're driving along the road, the slightest little knock on the catch and they can fly open while you're driving, which isn't very nice. So yeah, so here we go. I'm going to do some cleaning up. I'm going to cut this metal and start fitting it in, and this rusted stuff around here, I've got a few options. I could cut this box section so that it actually overlaps into the rusted areas, if you follow. Where are we? This has already got an angle on the end, in fact. See, I could do that with it and make that actually project in to that rotten area slightly. Then I could just weld some steel in here and bring it down to it. But I'll have a think about that. More likely to just go with as I've done on the other side and cut these on an angle here, and then just patch it in with some steel work. If I go far enough back here, I will find some fairly good quality steel. You can feel it inside. You go back, there's paint still, about, you know, half a centimetre back from the rusted areas, so it's all fixable. Yeah, so had a little thought, and I thought, well, if I work it down this, what I can do is I leave the steel up on this side here, even though it's a bit rotten and got holes in it. I can fold the edge of this steel part from here, the box section, upwards, hammer that over, and then weld that in, and so on. So basically I've cut this in that sort of shape because the bottom of the steel here on this part is raised, so I've cut it away at the bottom edge there, so that'll sit up against that. So I'm getting there. So I've got to do a similar sort of setup at the far end there, and basically fold this tab section up and then hammer it down and weld it onto the surface here, and that'll fill in the weld, save me getting little extra pieces of steel and hammering them on and welding them, so I can use existing metal rather than it going in the bin, and just bend it up, tap it on, weld it. So that's the plan. Okay, so with a little bit of smacking around, cutting and hammering, that ends up with bit of metal work looking like that. I think what I'll do is I will just actually put that over the top edge of the rusty steel, and I'll weld it, I'll MIG it round, fill the holes in and so on, and batter it around with a hammer, and eventually I should come up with something reasonably nice. I've bent this piece on a slight angle, and I've sort of done that as well over there with a pair of pliers, and then hammered it a little bit. So I think what I'll do now is, as I said before, I'm going to drill a series of holes in the angle, about 8 or 10 mil holes at regular intervals, probably about 3 inches apart. Stagger them underneath, so two holes there and then 1 hole underneath in between, if you get the idea. Then I'll blow this piece of metal over with weld through primer, and I'll get it welded up. Okay, right, okay, so once the metal's all fixed up, welded on, I've primed it, repainted it, and generally it's looking fairly good now. I've changed the hinge bolts to M8 hex top bolts, and they're all nice and solid now. Changed the door lock to a anti-burst lock from the old Slam. Changed the catch on the other side, had to muck around with that a bit. So the next part is putting the trim on. Now that's the rubber. So what I've done is I've got some 20mm angled aluminium over eBay, and I've basically tweaked the angle on it so that it's got a slight, it's no longer a 90-degree angle, it's about, say, 120 degrees or 110, something like that. Basically it's got to be the same profile as what the edge, the door frame of the door frame is. So I've cut these little notches out where it goes around the hinges, and I've carefully marked all the holes and punched them and drilled them so that the original 4 holes will line up, so the rivets will go in. Then what I'm using for rubber trim is I'm using this this type of channel, this type of edging. So right, so I've used this sort of trim, and it pushes on the edge of the angle like that, and that will seat in like so. So all I have to do now is pop rivet that back on, and that should give me a nice close on the door, as you can see, and it seals the water up. Yeah, I know the shut lines on the door aren't very good. I think it's being optimistic, hoping for decent quality looking shut lines. The important thing is that the lock will catch and line up and so on. That's about as good as it's going to be without doing a lot of work. Right, so that's it. I've changed the door top, put a galvanized window unit in, repaired these windows, these mirrors where I needed to. What I've done here is mounting the mirror is I've actually drilled through the galvanized section there, but what I probably should have done is mounted a bracket onto the 2 M8 bolts and then fitted the wing mirror onto a bracket, and then that would have saved drilling the galv, but I'm okay with it. I've also done the door on the other side as well. I didn't need to put as much steel work in on this side. I just had to replace the bottom with some box section, and all looking good. I've put catches in to lock the windows, so that's good now. Other little jobs I'm doing aside from the doors is I've made a little center console here, and I've got a bracket which is coming up through from the chassis there, and that's going to be for mounting a gun on in some sort of way, maybe a 50 cal. Yeah, so all good. What do you think, Bo? You happy? Yeah. It's a scratching post.